It's a real pleasure to be joined today by Affan Butt, founding partner of Aream Co, a leading investment bank focused exclusively on the global gaming industry with offices in London, San Francisco, Berlin, and soon Singapore. Affan has over 25 years of experience in investment banking, including senior roles at UBS and Credit Suisse, and he has advised many of the world's leading gaming companies. Affan, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Most welcome, Ariane. Happy to talk to you.
All right, we'll just start off with your journey. So, could you sort of take us back to your start, and what sort of shaped your ambitions, and how your sort of early experiences influenced your career path?
Sure. So I didn't know I was going to be in investment banking when I was in your shoes, but somehow I fell into it. And what attracted me uh, to investment banking was more the sector that I was interested in, which was tech, more broadly speaking. And to me, investment banking was a way for me to participate in that. I wasn't smart enough to start my own, tech startup or anything. So I started my tech banking career on the West Coast in Palo Alto and San Francisco. And, you know, way before your time, Ariane, there was the first dot-com bubble in kind of 99, 2000. I was there at the time. And so I got to see some very exciting things, happening. And and I guess working in that environment where it was a lot of high growth companies, founder driven, very dynamic stuff happening, I think that was really appealing to me and working with these kinds of people versus, me being super excited about, accounting and corporate finance. So I think as we'll talk further, my early days of that kind of seeing that entrepreneurial spirit, working with high growth companies really shaped kind of what I did going forward.
And did you have any mentors or any early figures who sort of made a lasting impact on how you approach the industry?
Yeah, I think I was lucky. I think if you don't have, if I didn't have good mentors, I probably would have quit investment banking because it's a very high stress, high paced job. And I had different kinds of mentors. When I first started, I was more on the sales and trading side. And so that was my first job out of college with a gentleman who was very helpful in kind of bringing me on board, even though I had no background. And he he really helped me um, get get through the U.S. Visa process and all that kind of stuff, which was not straightforward. And then when I moved um, to the West Coast, I was first in equity research. The analyst there I was working for, I learned a lot from as well. And then when I moved into banking, there were, two people who I worked with quite extensively. And actually, my move from Credit Suisse to UBS was driven by that because they had moved there, so I followed shortly. So I think in this industry, I guess like in life everywhere, having mentors are very important. And I think that's what and you try to pay it forward when you can. So whether it's now trying to help, kids who need visas and things like that, people who want work experience, um, even if we don't have formal summer internships, if somebody, we had the last couple of summers, we've had students come in. So I think then you try to pay it forward. So it's good. It's always good to have um, that kind of mentality, I feel.
Nice. And obviously prior to founding Areem, you were at UBS, Credit Suisse, and as we mentioned also, Code Advisors. What exactly did you learn about the industry, sort of investment banking as a whole, before starting your own thing?
I think, look, investment banking industry, there's some cliches, right? That's about people and all that kind of stuff. The reality is the the there are some basic things that you just have to be good at, right? Uh, which is the numbers and the process and all that good stuff. to me, that's the easy part because that's a very commodity type of thing, right? Anybody can have a very nice model. Anybody can know all the legal aspects of SPA or things like that. I think where you differentiate yourself and the skills you have to learn, they're the softer skills, right? They're the how likable are you? Are you a trusted partner? Do you know the sector that somebody's in very well, and you can make the right connections and all that kind of stuff. So I think that is a process that is the learning is never ending because every deal is different, every situation is different, every client is different. But if you think about somebody in my position at a small firm, and you are selling a company, for example, for a founder, and that's his or hers potentially biggest financial decision of their life, and they've trusted you to work with them on that, A, that's a big responsibility, but B, that's very fulfilling. And to get to that position, I think again, they're looking for who they can trust and who uh, knows their industry and sector the best. So I think as you go through your career, then I think those are the things that you learn. The basics you have to kind of hone, right away, I feel. And that's what we tell our people, even if, young people coming straight out of college, the idea is, you want to learn the basics early, and the hard work and all that, that's a given. And then it's the how do you develop your software and personal skills. And it sounds weird, but people who are just about to maybe come into a lot of money, it's actually quite stressful for them. I know it sounds funny because they're about to suddenly make whatever it is about to make, but maybe it's because they're selling their baby, right? That's something they founded many, or just the stress of what's going to happen or whatnot. And so a lot of our job is actually being there for them as support, sounding board, advisor, all that kind of stuff. So those are things that you really try to develop over your career. And I think having been at a big bank helped me develop certain skills. Then I went to a smaller bank. You learn how to develop certain skills. And then when you do your own thing, then you try to obviously, build on all of that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think, as you mentioned, a lot of those things are commodified, but to be a trusted advisor, you need soft skills or things that perhaps you get with time. And if it's a plus if you have them at an early age, straight out of college.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So why gaming? Were you a gamer yourself, or was it just an industry trend that you saw? Why specifically that niche?
Yeah. So I was not a gamer, and I have to admit that I'm still not a gamer, mainly because I don't have time. But I like games. I like the concept of them. Um, and there's a couple of things. One, like I said, I like the sector, even though I might not be a massive gamer myself. Number two, I think it's a very creative sector, so the people that you meet are very interesting. Um, most of these businesses are very founder driven, so they may have raised some money, um, but a lot of them either haven't raised any money or it's very little because then the game took off and then you don't need the money, or you can raise, debt or UA financing or things like that. So it's very kind of a, personal kind of connection versus maybe an institutional board and things like that. And then being in London, tech has developed quite a lot over the coming years. So now you have some very big companies being developed out of Europe. But if you go back many years, it was a very, US or Asia dominated thing. But gaming, actually, there was a lot happening in Europe. There's a lot of talent, there's a lot of creativity. There are these pockets of centers, like whether it was initially Helsinki, Stockholm, London, Barcelona, Berlin, and then as things started to move eastwards. There was Eastern Europe, and then Turkey really took off, Israel, etc. So it was there, there's lots of different pockets within Europe that made sense to kind of be here. And you had Asian buyers looking towards Europe, you had US buyers looking towards Europe, so that was a good place to be. Also, the sector, it's not like, I mean, obviously there's some really big players, and now it's consolidating even more, but it's not a winner takes all, like there's just one company that controls, or two companies that control like 80, 90% of the, market. It's not like, so there's always, um, newcomers coming, there's room for creativity and new startups, and so it's more very dynamic. So so I think, yeah, those are probably the uh, main reasons.
And prior to starting Aream, what was your conception of gaming as a sector then and now, obviously having driven so many deals and worked as an advisor for so many leading companies?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think like I said, I hadn't, when I was at UBS, and you think of the times I was there, I think I came to London in 2004, and then I left to join um, Code in 2012. In that period, there wasn't that many gaming transactions happening in Europe. And, the mobile stuff hadn't really taken off. I'm thinking that I can't remember exactly now when King went public and Supercell, etc. But for us, the free-to-play mobile deals that we started doing were more when I started Code, probably around the 2013 when we worked with Supercell. So before that, I'd done some small, more on the PC console side deals, but I didn't realize how big or how dynamic the gaming sector would be until I got in. And then once you get in, you realize different trends take off at different times. There was a and it's never that it's killing the like free to play mobile when it came. There's some idea that premium or PC console would suffer dramatic, and that's not what happened. Um, and then as I've been inside it, you see that there's certain maybe genres that are taking off, certain geographies that are maybe taking off more, some tangential sectors getting kind of a little bit gamified. So I think until I got in to the sector, I didn't really know how big and dynamic and global it was.
And what was the process of starting your own investment bank, and why Aream Co? What was the meaning behind the name?
So why did I start? So it's a good question. I did not, when I went into investment banking, I did not have the plan that, hey, one day I'm going to start my own firm. So I think there was a sequence of events that happened to lead me to that. And, everything in life has its pros and cons, right? So I think it was a great experience that I got working at both CSFB and UBS. But I think once I had moved to Europe, I guess a couple of things happened. One, as I became more senior uh, at a big bank, you notice that there's a lot of uh, admin or internal or the work that's basically non-client facing that you have to do. And as I told you earlier, my passion here is more to work with clients. That's the fun part, doing deals, spending time with clients and building relationships and things like that. Um, and the other thing was that I was working in tech, and tech in Europe at that time was smaller, and at UBS wasn't one of the biggest franchises. And so there came a time when I thought, you know what, it was just a natural evolution for me. I think that maybe it's time to be at a more dynamic, entrepreneurial, type of place. And that's what I got introduced to Code Advisors. And I really liked that I was able to set up the London office for them and, grow the team. And again, I wasn't expecting to leave there. I think what happened in my thinking was that I felt similar to what I was saying earlier to your earlier question that I wanted to be differentiated in banking because again I think there's too many bankers in the world and all that stuff. So one way I thought was to really specialize and be like really sector experts, and so that way I feel like you can add more value uh, to a situation, and then you get more value. Then of course then that translates into fees and things like that. And I think my partners there at the time were thinking more the other direction, which was let's diversify even more, maybe set up a fund and all that. And I was of the view that we should be more specialized. And and I also, thought that um, I thought there might have been more synergies between what we were doing in London and they were doing in San Francisco. And so then I think it was a natural evolution for me to say, well, maybe I should just take my own destiny in my own hands and set up our own thing. And so we had grown the team to 8 people at the time. And I took the plunge. And I think each time, whether it was going from UBS to Code or Code to setting up our own thing, was a very risky move. And like I said, I'm not one of those people who was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I have these great visions and great risk taker and all that. So I think for me, it just happened. It was a natural. And even though they were the riskiest moves that I had as options, I didn't even think twice about it. It just felt like a natural thing. So could I have left either UBS earlier or Code earlier? Could I have later? Who knows? It just came a time when it just felt right. The name was a little bit of, it means nothing. It's, I guess I like the idea that it would start with an A. And then, there's my kids' names and things like that thrown in there, jumbled up. And then after I came up with an A, I was like, oh, this is a good mix between the A team and the dream team. So, but that's not really where it came from. It sounded nice afterwards. Funnily enough, Aream.com was taken. Um, I think in Germany, I think also some financial thing or industrial thing. I don't know. We do have the option to buy the thing now, but anyway. But then I just thought, with Aream Co, Aream.co worked nicely as well, so we went with that.
Yeah, no, it works really well.
Uh,
Having worked with so many gaming companies and founders, as you mentioned, people that are ultimately selling companies that they've put hours and years into, what characteristics do you think tend to sort of distinguish the most successful ones?
I think, look, if you look at a lot of, well, and this was to your earlier question, why I like gaming, I think a lot of it comes down to kind of their passion. And I think I would break this into two categories. There's the PC console guys and then the mobile guys, right? Just broadly speaking. And when you look at the PC console space, you will run into many companies that are founder owned almost fully, have been around for many, many years. And it was somebody who, just started coding in their basement, maybe sometimes even literally. And that game has just continued to grow for years. And there's a lot of examples of these long-lasting games, right? We've worked with companies like Jagex. I think they have like 25-year-old cohorts. Um, CCP with EVE Online, I think has been around for forever. So, and there's a lot of smaller companies like that which will meet them, and they've been going for many years. And the way those founders work is it's a passion of theirs that they wanted to build and grow, and the money, the success just kind of was a byproduct. And mobile's a little bit different because it's more newer industry. And there's a lot of like marketing aspect to it, UA, but you still find a lot of, creatives in there. And I think, look, I'm sure it's true in other industries as well, but I felt that in gaming, that closeness that the founders have because it's their, they've created a game, they're passionate about it, they grow it, and then it's almost like if we do the right things, the money will come. Versus maybe if it's a software program where you need to have a sales force and this and that, it's a uh, different kind of connection that that you have. So I think that so I think that look, the successful founders or not. I mean, I think obviously you have to have some maybe business sense and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's about creating a great game that people enjoy. And so I think when they're passionate about something, they're always focused on can I make people have fun? And if you can, generally speaking, the monetary rewards, do come.
And obviously, you mentioned, people are such a big aspect of this, whether it's someone who works at a basement. If we compare that to your own journey, as Areem has grown cross regions, you've also had to place a lot of trust in people representing the firm, right? So how do you
Yes.
evaluate or gauge whether someone has a judgment and maturity to take on the responsibility? Not only of, again, as we've discussed before, having the business acumen or knowing the numbers, but also to be a sounding board, to be a good empathetic person to a founder that's stressed, worried, unsure. How do you gauge that?
Look, I think that's a good question. This goes a little bit into your earlier question of, my journey. When we started Aream, we had we had the option of obviously going out and hiring a number of other bankers to bring them onto the platform, senior bankers who would be able to be revenue generating. And as a founder, you kind of take a cut or in whatever way you look at it. I want a very different way. I think given my background, I wanted to set up something that was very much something that aligned with me personally from a cultural standpoint. And and so if we look at the hires we made, they were at the very junior to maybe slightly above junior level. And the idea there was to grow the people within the firm based on kind of how I wanted things to run. And I think it's very gratifying because we have at the senior level, I have zero churn, and people who joined when I first started at Code. So I think we made our first external hire in 2013. Um, those people are still here with me, and we've got a couple of examples of team members who joined as interns and have now become, MDs. So two of them, for example, one of them is running our office in San Francisco, and the other one you mentioned, recently opening Singapore. Actually, we already opened it. He moved there in December. So I feel like, having the team, the senior team I'm talking about, been with me for, 10, 12 years. Yeah, and it's kind of grown up with me. It feels a very different cultural experience than kind of we've just hired, a lot of senior people, and that's what I wanted. So I think when you do that, um, then you automatically build trust over time. And so then if somebody raises their hand and says, "Hey, I want to go open up Singapore," it's a much easier discussion versus imagine if I said, "Oh, I want to open Singapore, let me go there and find a senior banker and hire them." And it would be a very different proposition. So I think it was a much longer road, right? Um, but it's been great because the team, gels really nicely, works together very well. They're all singing off, and of course, people are different, still bring their different personalities to the table. We don't want them to be robots, but there's a central element of how we work together, how we want how we want our clients to see us, how we want to be seen and act in public. And so we like to say that we need to be, hungry, happy, and humble. And the philosophy is actually quite similar to what I was talking about earlier about the freemium model, which is like if we do the right things by clients, and to use gaming terminology, focus on retention and engagement, the monetization will come. And touch wood, that's how it's worked out. But yeah, it's personally very gratifying for me to see my work kids growing up along with my home kids. But, so yeah, it's great to come to work every day and to have that team, and you know how it is without a team, it's not possible.
Yeah, I absolutely love that actually. I think the fact that you had the option of again hiring senior bankers, which is a very common model. You had the option of doing that, but you sort of went for the let me nurture young talent, make sure that they sort of grow with me as the sector also develops. I think it works really well, especially for the sector you're serving. And I think that again could apply to any industry,
Yeah,
just investment banking. So I think that's a very, very good, strong philosophy to have there. It
right.
must be very not difficult, but it must be interesting for you to sort of see people that came in as an intern and left, or not left, or sort of developed into MDs and senior figures. It must be very fascinating for you to see that journey.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, it's fulfilling,
Hmm.
and it's nice to see them flourish. I think as a you know how it is, if you're in a team, uh you're only as good as kind of the broader team, right? It's not one person. And I think it's I learned early on that, like, if I have a team member that is excellent, and they might be better than me at everything, that can only reflect well on me as well, right? So I think it's kind of like this, and in banking it becomes very difficult because normally it's a kind of sharp elbows and grabbing territory and deals and revenue credit and all these kind of things. And one of the reasons for staying small and for growing this way is, yeah, I think if I hired 100 bankers tomorrow, for example, there's no way I can run it the same way. I don't know what everybody's doing. I don't want to get into the admin bureaucracy of, Ariane, how are you spending your time on which client. But when it's just a few of us, it's much easier to see and all that. And so I think that's when, if your team members are doing really well, that's only good for everybody, and it reflects, well, on me. So then that's satisfying.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And one other thing that's interesting is, a lot of our clients, the feedback we get
Mhm.
is, at some of our client events or anything, is they see how well we work together, or how we treat each other. Uh, That sounds kind of silly, but they look at us, they're like, wait, if you guys like each other and you trust each other and you work well as a team, that means there must be something, good here. And and they see that over the course of a few days when we're all hanging out together. So I think that to me has been super fulfilling.
No, again, I really agree with that. As someone who's just entering the industry myself, it doesn't sound silly to me. It sounds very much like the center of it, right? Because even small things, just having oh, how are you doing culture, like,
Right,
checking up on people. I think that, again, it sounds very ancillary, but I think it has a big impact and clients see that stuff. So I think it sort of goes with the entire image of being a trusted advisor at the end of the day. Um,
right,
if we discuss the industry itself, Areem
yeah.
released its second gaming CEO survey, which is based on, I believe, around 80 CEOs, insights from around the world, for both mobile and PC and console. From the main findings of the report, though, what stood out to you personally? And has anything in the responses surprised or just been a bit of a shock to you?
I think maybe not so much a shock, but I think to wrap that question, there's probably three things I guess you see stand out. One was interesting is that the PC console guys are more optimistic than mobile in terms of spend. Uh, it's interesting how the second thing I was saying interesting that it's both in gaming, but as I mentioned, you mobile and console are actually quite different. And when we've had conferences where they're both there, sometimes they don't really speak the same language. So, if you look at the mobile guys, their biggest challenge is, user acquisition, um, and how to, because they're on like this kind of machine, a lot of them. And whereas for PC console guys, they talk a lot about kind of saturation, which is how many games are coming out, how much time do you have in a day to play certain games. And so that was interesting. And also, I think what was interesting was that mobile guys were actually uh, betting more on kind of new launches for growth, whereas the PC console guys were more on kind of live ops and growing that. So I thought that was really interesting because I thought that maybe the mobile guys, because it's so hard to launch new games, would be more pessimistic about how much, they might get from new games, but turned out to be the opposite.
That's fascinating. Is it more so because the customer acquisition cost in the industry tends to be higher than retaining
Yeah.
pre-existing customers or gamers?
Yeah.
And one thing that I sort of found interesting in the report was the AI adoption. So it seems that mobile developers tend to be a lot faster on AI integration. Um, do you think that that is just because it's perhaps maybe this is an assumption that you could correct if I'm wrong? It's faster to create mobile apps with the use of AI than it is to do that with a PC or console game, just because of the intricacy required in coding or software or experience
Yeah.
to make a game.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just the development cycle of a mobile game is very different than PC console. I mean, you know how it is. It's months versus years. I think the PC console guy, the users are very picky about what kind of content they want to see. I think you've seen some examples if you look at the news of any of this AI content, they just throw up all over it. And they want, authentic kind of authored uh, content, whereas mobile guys might be more, uh, what do you call it, tolerant that, there's some, because, they're maybe just playing quickly for a few minutes at a time. So maybe they're more tolerant that, there's some AI components being thrown at them. But I think PC console very different. And then a third thing I think is the business model which we talked about because the mobile business I think requires more AI when you're talking about your creative iteration process is driving like what kind of CPI you're getting. Um, then you kind of move in real time. So I think AI is more relevant there, whereas PC console, it's much more over time. You have to earn it. You've got to build the community. What's the critical reception and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I think that was just to build on what you said. I think that was what was interesting. I think also, look, in any of these hype cycles, it's always like, well, AI is going to kill this or kill that or do this or do that. And so we heard the same thing of like, oh well, now you're just going to create games start to finish on AI and just put them out there. I mean, I have no idea if it's going to happen. I know there's one or two songs out there that, but I think for games, it's much more they're enabling tools. It's not like suddenly all these games just uh, made by AI, right? But certainly when we speak to some of our mobile clients, they have seen a lot of efficiency. Um, and even if it's 10-15%, when you talk about headcount, like that's meaningful.
You touched on something there about obviously the concept of making a game completely with AI just in a couple days or even longer, perhaps. And you also mentioned earlier that you experienced dot-com bubble. Do you see any similarities in how perhaps if games were just to be built hypothetically in a couple of days with just a few lines of code and just some good judgment, do you think we'd start seeing games that perhaps have features to companies that sort of existed in the dot-com bubble?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of these, what do you want to call them, hype cycles, bubbles, etc. There's always, the usual kind of pattern where things go up and then a lot of things kind of die because you realize it. And games like the making of the game, like I guess you could probably use some tools to just come up with, a game that works, I suppose. But I think all the kind of elements that go into it, whether it's PC or whether it's mobile, where it's all the level design and the marketing and this, like, I'm not seeing like suddenly like people just getting rid of everybody. In fact, some of the Chinese guys we speak to who use a lot of AI, if you look at the top charts, a lot of the games now are Chinese. Actually, they're still hiring lots of people. They're doing lots of A/B testing, and of course they're using AI, but um, they're still able to be successful because they have a lot of people that can help with the pushing out the content and the cadence of that. So I don't know. We we aren't seeing yet with our clients. Like I said, they're definitely getting efficiencies, but it's not like they're suddenly just wiping out entire teams and just having AI, make some games. But look, AI, this stuff is moving so quick. If I had such a good crystal ball, but so let's see what happens. But that's at least what we're seeing from our clients.
And if we look at the industry more broadly and sort of your opinion of it, what's your favorite event of the gaming calendar and why is that?
So actually, we're trying to have our own event become the main gaming event, but leaving that aside, I think there's tons of gaming events going on. I mean, if I was like, let's just go to every gaming event, I could probably do that every day. Um, if I leave kind of the East aside for a second, which is like China Joy and G Star and Tokyo Game Show and stuff, the ones I go to are Pocket Gamer London because it's here. Uh, GDC in San Francisco, although last year I didn't go and this year I probably won't go, and I think it's starting to lose a little bit of its shine. And then Gamescom in Cologne. Now, to my earlier point, I think there are some conferences now. If you think about East, whether it's in Korea, China, actually even Turkey, starting some, and then maybe Vietnam, where I think potentially it makes more sense for us to go as well. Um, but yeah, those are the ones that I go to. But like I said, the team, broadly team, I don't think we've done Tokyo, but we've certainly done the other geographies.
And how would you sort of compare the mood at Pocket Gamer from this year to last year? Was there anything different in the conversations you were having?
Yeah, I think there was slightly more optimism. Uh, and now whether that's because we were starting off from a low bar, maybe not last year, but the year before that was more depressing. Um, but I think last year and then this year it seems to, picked up a bit. I don't think that's not to say that there's not some challenges the industry is still facing. Um, but certainly the mood was more positive. And as you saw in our report, there are people there's more positivity than negativity. And on the deal side, I think again, while we have some challenges, like we lost some buyers because they got acquired themselves, or some of the public companies, their stocks are down themselves. So we have some issues like that. But I still feel that there are people who want to, make deals happen. There are companies who have, a lot of cash on their balance sheet. You've got two big conglomerates of like the Tencent world and the PIF, Savvy, Saudi, Scopely, that kind of world that will hopefully continue to build as well. So I think, yeah, slight optimism.
And if we continue that line of discussion on the deal side, we've seen a meaningful increase in, I guess you could say, later stage private capital sort of flowing into the sector over the past few years. Do you expect that interest to sort of continue building, or do you think some investors have been, burnt by past cycles, meaning that most M&A activity will be from strategics?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. You know, early on in our gaming days, we certainly saw that most investors didn't want to talk about gaming. They just didn't understand, and it was the usual stuff we heard that it's hit driven, it's et cetera, et cetera. And then over time, what we've seen is that actually a lot of these games, which they thought were going to be hit driven and short lived, hasn't been the case. I mean, Candy Crush has been going on for how many years, and uh, so that made us feel that, well, at some point, some of these late stage investors, will start to get more excited. Now, it's more gradual. I mean, you've seen some deals like CBC obviously bought Jagex along with Haveli. Haveli's set up a gaming, specific fund. We've seen some other private equity deals as well. I'm leaving aside the sovereign wealth fund, PIF for a second. So we have seen some more, entrants coming in, but I don't think it's at the level yet where, for example, if you had a software company ABC, where you might still have like 20 PE guys show up. It's nothing like that, but certainly there are people coming in, and as you know, if some of these can be good success stories, then hopefully that'll lead to more coming in.
And when you look sort of across your career, is there any deal that is particularly memorable for you? Both, I guess, for a positive reason in terms of something you enjoyed or something it taught you.
Oh, it's a tough question. There's a lot of good deals. You know, People ask me what's the quickest deal you've done. There's a food delivery company out of Kuwait called Talabat, which we sold to Rocket Internet. And usually deals can take several months. When we're guiding people, we say 4 to 6 months just to be safe, and then sometimes take longer. This took 4 days, so that kind of always stands out as a unique deal. But in the gaming world, I think given Supercell was my first deal, and it was at a time when they had just launched Clash of Clans, and the team was fantastic, and it literally was growing like this, and every week we'd make a financial model and they'd kind of blow through it. And normally it's the other way around. It's like you build a model and companies sometimes don't make it. But so for a lot of those reasons, that deal also always sticks out in my head.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that because I think when that was happening, I was in school, and
So,
a lot of my teachers would hate the fact that I'm saying this, but people would be playing Clash of Clans in class, Clash
yeah,
Royale.
sure.
So yeah,
Yeah,
those numbers were not the only thing that they had a big impact, I think, on a generation and
yeah,
especially
yeah,
gaming.
yeah. And it's such a great company, and look at the longevity and the number of hit franchises they've come out with and stuff. So yeah, that was fun. But I've got many stories. A lot of stories where it took from my initial meeting to when a deal actually happened. I think of Peak Games, which we sold to Zynga. That was a relationship that we had for like 11, 12 years before a deal happened. So I think each deal always has a special you know place in your heart.
Yeah, it's good to know that that every deal sort of has like a because again, it's to a lot of people or a lot of people I think who view this as just as a revenue generating endeavor. It's just you do one and then you move to another. But if you actually like get to know the founder and build a relationship, as you mentioned, I think over time it can become something very personal to who you are as well. And
Yeah, I think that's the key. That it's I know this is going to sound like a cliche, motherhood and apple pie and all that stuff, but actually, because we are dealing with founders, every deal is special, and they become friends. And when you're in a position where I am, like you work with people that you want to work with, and so that's why way back when you asked about gaming, like that does make it more special. And so every deal then that isn't just like, well, it's a deal. It might be a relationship that you've been working on for ages. Most of our deals are referrals or repeat anyway. So it just creates a different kind of environment, like I said, versus you're at a big bank and you're just, churning out kind of transactions.
100%. If we just talk about Singapore again, because we've touched on that a few times, what was the rationale behind that decision? Why Singapore? And like, what does it sort of tell you about how, I guess, capital flows are globally?
So Singapore, I think there's a couple things. One is, like I said, to our cultural point, where I think it was easy to open it because Anjan had raised his hand up and said, I want to go. I think otherwise we've been thinking about it, but we were always struggling a bit, like, well, how are we going to do it? Reason why Singapore, I think if you look at the mobile gaming industry mostly, but even some PC, a lot of it is moving, east. Turkey's been in the headline for many years. They've been some amazing uh, companies there. There's still some amazing companies that keep coming up. So there's something in the air, there for sure. Um, but if you look at the top charts, places like Vietnam, I mean, you'd expect China obviously up there, but places like Vietnam, even Pakistan, etc., are starting to really rise up. And um, and so we just see that a lot of the big hit games are coming out from that region. Um, and I think maybe we're even probably late getting there. We probably should have gone there earlier, but it was all down to doing the right way for us versus just planting a flag there for revenue purposes. Um, so we've been doing deals globally since the beginning, right? We've done deals out of Korea, China, India, etc. That's not an issue, but having somebody there just makes it easier to build closer relationships and have a team executing on the ground and things like that. So yeah, touch wood. Let's hope it goes well.
And if you were starting again today, are there any ways of thinking or just doing that sort of took you a long time to learn, but you'd want to have much earlier?
Look, hindsight is 2020. I would have started Aream earlier, I suppose. But I believe things happen for a reason the way they do. And no, no regrets. It's been great. Look, you're always learning and trying to do things better. This job, that's one thing it's also great about. I don't care how many years you've been in the industry, you're always learning from one deal to the next, and it's fascinating. But at a higher level, no, I think it's been um, yeah, it's been a good journey.
And what advice do you find yourself giving over and over to students?
Look, it's kind of what we talked about earlier, and I tell my kids as well. Like, actually, the bar is pretty low because uh, if you're like a genius or rocket scientist, like probably this place you'd get bored because banking is not that, stimulating from that standpoint. So, it comes down to work ethic, attitude, all these basic things that sound super, cliche, but it's the little things that go a long way. And, my journey into investment banking, I mean, I don't want to get into too much details, it's a long story, but I was in college, I'd run out of money, I was waiting tables, I didn't know where I was, headed. And then I found this part-time job with we call them stockbrokers back then. These days, maybe it's wealth manager or whatever. And uh, this is that gentleman I was telling you about earlier. He was paying me cash on the side. I was answering phones. I was making presentations. I was faxing stuff, which now doesn't exist. But it was anything to kind of to get in. And what I see these days with a lot of young people um is sometimes that kind of hunger is missing. Uh, and it's always interesting to me because on one hand I hear about how job market's tough and people want to get a foot in the door and all this kind of stuff. On the other hand, when we're looking to hire, we're struggling. So I'm like, well, how do those two things match? I don't know, Ariane, maybe when you speak to all your friends, does everybody want to become an influencer on YouTube or wherever? I don't know, but like I, for me, it was just a whatever I can do to get my foot in the door, and work my ass off, and because it's those kinds of things, the attitude, that's what makes it like if you're the best model on the planet, like yeah, that's nice, but that's only going to get you kind of so far, if you will. So yeah, I kind of scraped my way through. I got into sales. I worked for this guy. Then I went into research because banking wasn't hiring, but I always wanted to get into banking. Then I went to bank. So uh, that was just good old hard work, perseverance, right attitude, being proactive. These days, like I said, we try to pay it forward, and there are many times where we are leaning out to to people, and sometimes I just don't see that hunger and desire. I just put that down to generation gap, I guess. I don't know.
It's very inspiring. It almost sounds very much like the American dream, right? You can go
Yeah,
and you can sort of rise through, and that's very inspiring. And I'm sure that that journey's taught you a lot. Um,
yeah.
Looking back across everything you've built and experienced, what has brought you the greatest sense of fulfillment, both professionally and or personally?
I think it's what we just talked about when you asked me about setting up, Areem and the team. I think when you set something up that's your own and you develop people and you see them flourish, I have to tell you that like that to me has been the most uh, fulfilling.
Well, yeah, that's a great answer. And again, thank you so much for making the time for this conversation. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you,
talking
Arya.
to you and
It's been a
learning from you.
pleasure. I hope it inspires some kids to get into banking, and if they are, like I said, we try to be as helpful as we can.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Have a good one.